This is one of the most bizarre stories I've personally come across when it comes to fast food stories. The video appears to showcase an ordinary customer purchasing a meal at Subway, but what happens next will have you shocked from your head to my toes. Get it? To my toes? Tomatoes? Never mind. On with the story. I used to be a regular customer at Subway, taking a mouthful of cold cuts with juicy tomatoes and various veggies. But now that I started working at one of my favorite restaurants of all time, it was a lot more than I expected. I was given the task of filling in the condiments, but it wasn't easy. I had poor coordination and I worked slower than my more experienced colleagues. So to compensate for my lack of ability, I decided that coming to work an hour earlier would give me ample time to prepare meats and vegetables before opening. I looked outside the window and noticed just how dark and gloomy it was. It gave me the notion that rain was about to pour down at any moment. On top of that, I was all alone. So when a man started banging on the glass door, it was horrifying. He wore tattered clothes, his skin possibly blackened by the smoke of passing vehicles along the road. So yes, he appeared to be a homeless man. From the looks of his red-rimmed eyes and varicose veins, this deranged man resembled a zombie trying to get in. Hey! 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 Open up! I need to use the restroom to take a piss! I hesitated, not knowing what he would do to me if I opened the door. Furthermore, the restaurant was still closed, so I wasn't supposed to let anyone in except the owner or staff members. Hence, I tried to reason with him and said,
"I'm sorry, sir. Please come back later when we're open. We only have about 50 minutes left, so just wait a while." 50 minutes? The man appeared to be getting more aggressive now. I don't have 50 minutes, okay? If you don't open this door right now, I'll have no choice but to reveal my footlong and take a piss on the entrance. Do you want that? He challenged. Agitated, I replied, "Oh, you wouldn't dare. I'll report you to the police."
I immediately got on the phone when he started to unbutton his pants. I'm not kidding, I'll really do it, he said with conviction. So I put down the phone and asked him to stop.
Okay, I believe you. Sheesh, man. Don't do it. I'm letting you in, but briefly, okay? Cross my heart and swear to die, he said as he giggled in triumph. I was still reluctant to open the door. However, I didn't want to be reprimanded by the shop's owner or manager for his loathsome act. So as soon as I unlocked the door, he strode at lightning speed and went straight to the restroom as he said he would. While he was busy answering the call of nature, I stood at my post behind the counter, waiting for him to finish his business and leave. However, upon vacating the restroom, he approached the counter and demanded that I offer him a soda to help him hydrate. So I asked for his payment, to which he said, I wasn't making an order. Then, when demanding a drink wasn't enough, he added, and oh, throw in a sub while you're at it. Since he didn't have any cash on him, I thought it would be appropriate to give him water instead, which he frowned upon at first, but eventually accepted because he was genuinely thirsty. However, ordering a sub was a whole different matter, and it was something I couldn't allow him to have. Nettled by my lack of acquiescence, he said, I need something to fill this belly! Are you giving me that or not? Despite my anxiety growing, I stood my ground and replied, No. In fact, I would appreciate it if you were grateful for the water I gave you. And besides, I told you that I'd let you in briefly.
So, before I had any chance to dial on my phone, he went over the counter in a flash, grabbed my phone and made me collapse to the ground, hitting my head so hard that he almost knocked me out cold. Then, as I struggled to get on my feet, I saw him take all the money from the cash register and make a run for it. I used the restaurant's landline phone to contact my boss and the police. When they arrived, they instantly reviewed the surveillance footage and got my statement. Luckily, I wasn't reprimanded. In fact, my boss sighed in relief, seeing that I escaped this ordeal with only a few bruises. So, the rest of the day went by as usual. Even when I was offered to take a day off, I politely refused and told my boss that I could still handle the job. We had so many customers coming in and out that I instantly forgot about that creep from earlier this morning. In the evening, the number of people had finally diminished, but unfortunately over-fatigue had taken over my mind and body, where I almost slept on the job. Then, moments later, a customer came in and approached the counter. I yawned as I took his order, and I didn't even bother looking at him because I was so lethargic. The man proceeded to order a footlong. While I was busy preparing his sub, he kept yapping about how stingy I was with the ingredients. The guy stood at the counter telling me, "Could you be a little more generous with the damn condiments? I haven't eaten all damn day. I just took a huge dump in your washroom, which makes me even more hungrier. And this is what you give me? Pack the sub more!" With my back turned against the customer, I replied as I heard him stomp his feet, indicating his growing impatience.
Don't worry, sir. Just stay calm. I'm doing the best I can. And
then, without forewarning, he jumped over the counter with a knife in his hand. He pointed it at me menacingly, and with teeth clenched, he said, "Shh! Don't you dare make a move! And don't you even think of screaming for help if you don't want me to slice you into thin strips of salami!" My body froze in fear, and all my drowsiness evaporated into thin air. I stood far from the man collecting his bounty from the cash register, putting them in a bag. He was even murmuring something incomprehensible as he gathered the money with a sinister smile. Then, when he had his fill, he leaped over the counter and rushed out the door. I took the opportunity to run to the manager's office and call the police, and I made sure to lock myself in until the authorities arrived. Upon reviewing the surveillance footage together, we saw the man return to the counter after I had locked myself in the office, where he came back to get his sub before leaving the store for good. That's when I realized that I had met this man before, and that he was the exact same person who robbed me this morning. To this day, the police couldn't get their hands on him. I just hope I don't see him again, or his footlong.
I don't want a salad! You keep pointing to salad! I don't want a salad! Salad is a sandwich this big. Get it right, it's a 6-inch sandwich. I want a foot-long sandwich without a bowl.
I work the night shift at Subway, and for the most part, I prefer the much later shifts as there are far fewer customers at that time of night. The only major downside to the night shift is dealing with the crazies that come in from time to time. However, there's been one guy recently. He's been coming in just about every night, and out of all the people of the night I've encountered at this job, he's the one that scares me. He's super tall, with a mean overbite, and I can't exaggerate just how extreme those features are. When I say he's tall, I mean he's probably several inches over 7 feet tall. Well and far above the top of the measuring stick taped to the door that's meant to identify would-be robbers. And his overbite, it's downright freakish. It makes him look like some sort of man-crocodile hybrid, the way his gnarly rotten snaggle teeth jut out of his jaw, which he can't even fully get his lips over with how deformed it is. Because of this, his mouth is always hanging open, and his mouth breathing makes it even more obvious that his oral hygiene is non-existent. Even stranger, his clothes are too small to fit a guy as big as him, which makes me think he's either homeless or just too poor to be able to buy clothes in his size. But what really stinks the place up every time he comes in are his feet, which he never has shoes or socks on to cover up. Given that he looks so desperate and downtrodden, I thought at first he wouldn't be a very picky customer, but I was dead wrong about that. He always wanted his subs made to ridiculously exact proportions, like he was ordering catering to his wedding or something. And if I ever made a mistake, I wouldn't even have to give him a breath of attitude for him to flip out like a little baby, except his tantrums were anything but little.
Add lettuce now.
Okay, sir?
No, not enough! More!
Okay, sir.
No! Too much! Take it off!
That's how it went every time I made his sub. We were stuck in this dance of irritating exactness, where I would put on a tiny bit of a topping, or take off a tiny bit of a topping, and he would scream at me and threaten to rip my head off until I get it right. Obviously, making an entire foot-long sub like this takes an unreasonable amount of time. So even though it was the middle of the night, a line of tired, impatient people often formed behind him. Man, can't you just make it yourself if you're gonna be like this? Okay, sir, here's your one custom footlong, and that'll be $6.95. He dug through his pockets for several anxious seconds, obviously struggling to fit his huge hands in normal-sized pockets. Finally, he fished out a crumpled $5 bill and threw it on the counter, then picked the sub off the counter with his unnaturally long arms. But before walking away to eat, he looked me in the eye and flashed me a haunting grin and said,
$5 footlong!
Footlongs haven't actually been $5 for years, long since before I ever started working at Subway. But I wasn't about to pester this guy for $1.95. Plus, from the way he spoke, and just everything about the way he was, I figured he had some sort of mental disorder or disability, which meant I'd probably be talking to a brick wall if I even tried to get him to pay full price. So I just made up the difference of the change in the tip jar and called it sorted. But I must say, one of the weirdest things about him is the way he eats. He doesn't even chew. He just unwraps the sandwich and devours the whole thing in one bite. That first night, things were mostly uneventful. But that was only the first of many trips he made to the shop. After that, I saw him just about every shift, and I wasn't the only person there who recognized him. People hated getting stuck in line behind him because they knew he would take a stupid amount of time to get through. However, there was one customer in particular who had a special bone to pick. He was the guy in line that first night, just an average-looking black dude with a regular night shift break time. That guy was always snarky.
Why don't you just make the sub yourself since you're so damn tall?
Emotional damage! Leave me the hell alone!
I know this is a really weird situation, but I got used to it. I got used to his pickiness, and I even started to get better at knowing what he wanted. I got used to him sitting in the same exact spot every night to eat his sandwich in one unholy bite. I got used to taking a couple dollars out of my tips when he handed me a $5 bill. And I even got used to the way he scared me without even doing anything. He was obviously one of those people that needed a strict routine in order to function, so I wasn't going to mess with it, even if he underpaid for every order. But that's why I was struck with curiosity when his order suddenly changed. One night, he came in at the same time and ordered the same bread. There I was thinking this would just be like any other night, but then he didn't order any meatballs like he always did, just the cheese, veggies, and condiments. This helped bring the price of the footlong down $1 or so, but as always, he paid with a crumpled $5. I really didn't think he was trying to be economic, so I watched him as he sat down. I was only able to do this because it was slower than usual that night, and I had no other customers to attend to. I tried not to make it obvious, but I was mesmerized. He unwrapped the footlong and opened it up, then reached into his jacket and pulled out some kind of weird meat. I figured it was roadkill or jerky or something, but whatever it was, he laid it out very carefully on the sandwich, all the while muttering,
"Me make it myself this time."
And when he was done, he closed up the sub and swallowed it whole, just like every other footlong. This went on for several weeks, and each night, my curiosity grew. For some reason, business at the night shift had slowed down more than ever before, so I had very little to do but ponder what that mysterious meat was. At the beginning of my next shift, I planted a tiny little hidden camera inside the napkin holder on the table he always sat at. And after going through the motions one more time and closing up shop, I retrieved it and went home to look over the footage. All I wanted was a closer look at the meat he was eating, but I ended up getting more than I bargained for. I watched him pull out meat from inside his jacket, but as he did, a dark bloody finger fell out and hit the table. He saw this and quickly placed it in the sandwich before I could see it in the moment. But I'd seen it alright, and my mind was sent reeling. It didn't take me long to put two and two together, to realize that the crocodile giant had gotten fed up with a certain man's issues with his ways. Instead of settling for Subway's meatballs, he'd killed that man and had been eating him slowly for nights on end. No wonder business had been slow.
The next story was inspired by a viral clip online with a Subway employee acting out of pocket for the camera, in hopes of doing what most young individuals do for fame. Of course, nothing good ever comes out of this, but it was quite the feat to watch, as it shows what lengths people are willing to do to get notoriety. Here's a dramatized animation of what went down. I loved Subway because of its fresh ingredients. Moreover, it was the perfect way to have a hearty meal if I didn't have time to cook dinner at home. So on one particular night, I decided to drop by a place I called Heaven, and was disturbed at the sight of a man glued to his phone, snickering while he was on the job. His eyes often twitched like he had BEB or some other neurological disorder causing involuntary muscle spasms. And although it was just a hunch, something about the way he smiled made me think he was up to no good. Every now and then he would giggle under his breath like a maniac, while his eyes remained fixated on me. And speaking of his eyes, they were round and strained with dark circles surrounding the contours, making me think he was either under the influence of some kind of substance or suffering from over-fatigue. What a creep, I thought to myself, since there was nothing funny for him to laugh about. So I struggled between sympathy and perturbation, wondering if I should go out and look for another Subway branch instead. But it was already far into the night, and the next Subway was a few miles from here, which would make it impossible for me to reach it if I had to walk on foot. I was certain this was a new guy, because I'd been here many times before and acquainted myself with all the staff, including the manager. So, despite my slight agitation, I approached the counter and attempted to break the ice to make myself feel comfortable. "Hey man, how's your day so far?" He didn't say a word. The only thing I noticed was that this guy couldn't stop giggling like a constant ringtone that ruined my auditory experience. Then, out of the blue, he asked, "You want a footlong, Daddy?" I didn't know if that was some kind of slang or not, but I didn't like the way he said it. So I frowned at him, but noticed that he was actually pleased by this. Moments later, he said, "What would you like in that footlong, Daddy? We got tomatoes, onions, spinach, peppers, and my favorite, Burger King foot lettuce. Or should I say Subway foot lettuce?" Annoyed, I replied, "I'm here for turkey and tuna, and make it quick. You hear me?" My blood boiling, I clenched my fist as I used every fiber of my being to restrain myself. I heard my voice reverberate, filling the empty corners of the restaurant. That's when I realized that I was all alone with this creep, imagining the worst-case scenario where he might be capable of slashing someone's throat when provoked. So I relaxed my shoulders and attempted to regain composure. I then apologized for raising my tone, to which he gave the most unusual reply. First, he stretched a baleful grin and laughed like a mentally incapacitated person. Then, with lightning speed, the creep organized the condiments, his eyes glued to me the entire time. Moments later, he said, "Here's your order, sir. 1 footlong at your disposal, Daddy." "Stop calling me that! I'm not your daddy!" I replied, determined to leave the restaurant. I looked at the sub he gave me, but having lost my appetite, I crumpled the cash and threw it on the counter, showing him that I wasn't okay with his bizarre attitude. Then, my heart sank as I peeked through the windows. Outside, I could already hear thunderstorms nearby, giving me some anxiety. "No, please no," I told myself, thinking of the inevitable. Then, just when I was about to exit, heavy bags of water poured down, covering the area in torrential rain and strong winds. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like it would let up anytime soon, and since I lived 15 blocks away from Subway, I couldn't risk getting myself soaked because that would mean losing my beloved sandwich. My indignation swelling, I instantly regretted leaving my car at home. The weather forecast didn't mention anything about heavy rains, so I thought it would be the perfect time to take a stroll and have some exercise. Plus, it felt good to be able to save on gasoline. However, clearly, I was wrong. Moments later, the staff member still behind the counter chortled, glancing in my direction. Then he said, "It looks like you have no other option but to stay here and eat that footlong. After all, you wouldn't want the sub to get soggy, would you now, Daddy?" At first, I thought I could book an Uber car. However, based on experience, it was immensely arduous to get a hold of one under these dreadful weather conditions. So, after a while, the creep spoke again.
Come on, don't be shy. Take a seat and enjoy your sandwich. We've got plenty of empty chairs for you to choose from.
The only thing I could cling to at the moment was patience, and so, averting my gaze, I picked a seat next to the window. Then, listening to the constant downpour outside, I decided to open up the wrapper and dig into my sub. As soon as I took my first bite, I noticed the man stifle a laugh, and in his hand he held a cell phone directed toward me. I couldn't tell if he was taking a photo or a video of me, but either way, there was nothing normal about it. I wanted to enjoy eating my sandwich since it was the only good thing I had at the moment. So I did my best to turn a blind eye and focus all my attention on my delightful sub. Then, unable to contain his excitement, the creep suddenly burst into laughter, and from that point on, I had lost it entirely. I put down the sub, and with my mouth still full, I yelled,
"Why in the hell are you laughing, you creep?"
It took a while for him to gather himself. Then, moments later, nearly choking on his saliva, he said,
"Man, you're the best! And the funny thing is you don't even know it!"
Unable to restrain my anger any further, I went straight to the counter and confronted the guy, saying,
"Are you trying to pick a fight with me, dude? Leave me the hell alone or I'll beat the crap out of you!"
Then, without a tinge of reluctance, he leaped over the counter and sauntered towards me, saying,
"Are you sure about that? I could do far worse if you don't watch your mouth, Daddy."
Threatened, I took my sub and ran out of the restaurant, hoping the creep didn't follow me. Then, as I arrived home, I sat on the couch, and while munching on my sub, I browsed some TikTok videos on my phone. I encountered a couple of weird dance videos here and there, but none of them were as frightening as this TikToker who posted videos of him stepping on the restaurant's condiments with his dirty shoes and partially drinking Gatorade from the fridge and putting it back afterwards. But the most vexing of them all was his video of aligning condiments along the sides of an unflushed toilet, wet with urine and other substances. I gasped in horror as he smiled proudly, taking a video of himself with the ingredients in the background. And what made it even worse was that it was the same guy from the subway. I couldn't help but gag, putting away my phone. Then I threw away the remaining sandwich I had brought home. A few days later, I saw the creep on the news, and it said that he had already been fired. Unfortunately, the subway he worked for closed down because of him, and I had to veer away from the restaurant, trying to forget that creep and what he could have potentially done to my sub.
"Could you be a little more generous with the damn condiments? I haven't eaten all damn day. I just took a huge dump in your washroom, which makes me even more hungrier. And this is what you give me? Pack the sub more!"